Hello. Today I wanted to talk about error correction in the English as a second language classroom. Um, if you are a native speaker of English and you work in an environment, uh, let's say you live in Poland like myself, or if you live in Korea or some other place, there are There's one thing, if you've ever had a class observation, if somebody has come in and observed your class, there's probably one thing that they have thought to criticize you about, and it happens all the time. It's, why don't you correct their errors, or why don't you correct their errors more often? And I'm going to tell you my philosophy. I don't like to correct grammar errors for one simple reason. It's not an effective teaching tool. It's not an effective learning tool. The only time when I would correct a grammar error is if I actually have a grammar lesson and we are practicing some sort of grammar structure, which it happens. I had a lesson on conditionals yesterday, and we had like this conversation where they had to make questions using conditionals and they had to answer them. So when they were doing that, I was correcting their mistakes because the whole point was to have a grammatically correct statement. But if you ask somebody their opinion about sports or whatever, and they're in a second language and they're already trying to express what they want to express, and you say, but wait, you have to use a second conditional, then it's just going to be counterproductive because they're not going to want to speak. And I think speaking is the best sort of way to iron out those grammatical errors because um, the human brain is a mystery, and we learn grammar through practice. We learn a first language grammar through practice, and then we practice and we practice and we practice, and then it gets better and better and better. And even they did this experiment where they took people who, from different countries, who had been learning English for, let's say, a month, 2 months, a year, uh, through different levels, and they noticed that they were making the same mistakes at each level. So you would think that a French person, for example, would make a different mistake than a Korean person at one level, but no. So the mistakes that they were making because of their the English grammar was being internalized. It wasn't a question of their own native grammar interfering with anything, which I think is why a lot of uh, let's say foreign teachers of English, let's use that phrase, make that mistake and they overcorrect because they think that their native language is interfering with the production of English. So yeah, generally I don't believe in error correction unless you're doing a grammar activity where you want the production to be perfect, or when you are um, trying to produce error-free utterances in class, which I do sometimes. Um, yeah, what else is there to say about this topic? Yeah, I do have something else to talk about. Um, and I think that another problem is that a lot of these foreign teachers of English, they have gone to university to study English, and they have a lot of knowledge about English grammar, and they want to share that knowledge, and they think that I think on one hand, it's kind of like showing off. Like, oh, look at me, I'm an English teacher, and here you have, like, this that I know and you don't know, and it's kind of that way. That's one kind of psychological way. They don't want to waste what they've learned, right? But on the other hand, it's that they really don't understand how much a learner of English really needs to know. Like, for example, going back to this conditional class I had yesterday, in that school where I work, there are specific classes for grammar, and you can come and you can learn one grammatical structure. And what I often find is when I'm preparing the material, I find that the Polish teachers have stuck in like 5 other um, grammar exercises on top of the other exercises that are already in the material. And the material is not very ambitious, but I think that's actually a good thing, because if you want to learn about conditionals, you don't want to learn like 50,000 exceptions about conditionals. You just want to like go there, practice conditionals, go home, think that you've learned a little bit more. Yeah, but I think that Polish teachers, they have a tendency to overcorrect because they spend a lot of time and they think that it's a good thing. But I don't think that it's a good thing to overcorrect people's grammar errors, especially when they're speaking. And what else can I say? Oh, when do I correct? So um, another thing that so Polish students expect correction from native teachers. This is like the catch-22 that we're in, because they expect correction, and when they don't get correction, they're like, you don't correct me. But they expect correction to be in this kind of Polish overcorrection, look at me, look what I know and what you don't know kind of way. Like they expect them to be having a conversation lesson about sports and football, and then you make a mistake with an article, and they expect you to explain all 25 examples of the article and when you use it and when you don't use it, which I think is dumb. So when do I correct? And how do I correct? So I correct when I honestly don't understand something, or when I think that people who don't know Polish or how Polish people use English won't understand something. So I correct when I genuinely don't understand, or I think other people wouldn't understand. So I'm like, excuse me, could you repeat that? I don't understand what you're talking about. And then it forces them to use different structures, right? Different ways of saying things. So I think a lot of this can be gotten around by. So I think a lot of problems of native speakers of English in foreign settings can be avoided through communication. So I think if you have one language course, like for example, if you're teaching SE or CAE, you should say at the beginning, look, I'm a native speaker of English, and this is how I do things. I'm not going to correct everything because of the reasons I mentioned, because I don't think that it improves your English, because your English will improve with practice over time anyway. And when I do correct, this is how I'm going to correct it and why. Yeah, if you do that at the beginning, there will be a lot less problems, because I have currently problems in one of my classes with one school that I'm working with because I didn't do that at the beginning. I didn't say, look, this is how it's different, and they expect me to teach like a Polish teacher. Well, I'm not a Polish teacher. I'm not there to be like, I'm not, because they have other Polish teachers. Yes, but that's a topic for another day. So correction, yes, I say yes when you are doing grammatical exercises which require grammatical correction, and yes, when you don't understand what they're saying or you think your students won't be understood by other people. No, when the general idea of what they're trying to say is understandable, and when you are conversing in an open sort of way. So yeah, that's my 2 cents about error correction.